Welcome to the Candle Business Coach podcast. I'm your host, Kirsty Allen, and I am the Candle Business Coach. I'm also a mum of three and a kindness advocator. This podcast is all about making and selling candles, business development, and mindset, delivered to you with advice, inspiration, and motivation in a new episode every Friday. This episode is proudly sponsored by Aussie Insurance. When you start your candle making business, it's important to set the right foundations in place. Aussie Insurance have created a specialised policy for candle makers, which includes public and product liability insurance. They are the only insurance company I recommend for candle makers because they pride themselves on delivering insurance differently. Aussie are an online company and their passion is all about educating and supporting small businesses with the tools you need to grow and succeed along your journey. Visit aussie.com, spelled AUZI.com, to learn how the team can help you with all your insurance needs for your candle business. Welcome back to the podcast, my friend. Today we have the incredibly talented Caleb from Sperry Honey, who's actually here to talk to us about creating and designing websites. I know that this is something that's a little bit of a sticking point with some of the listeners because there's an investment, a financial investment in having a website. But I've said on this podcast many times before, a lot of people won't purchase from you through your DMs. They want to look on a website, they want to be taken on a journey, and they want the enjoyment of adding to cart, checking out, and then anticipating the delivery. So with all that said, Caleb, would you like to introduce yourself to the listeners?
I'm Caleb Dewick. I'm the Director of Operations at Sperry Honey. So basically what that means is I handle all of the online techie stuff with the honey, selling the honey and the beeswax. Other than that, I help e-commerce companies with their websites and their email marketing.
Incredible. Sounds like you've got a lot of things on your plate, but that you enjoy it and are very passionate about it, which is so important.
Yeah, that's why I was so excited to come on this podcast. I nerd out about this, and I'll literally show websites to my wife like, oh, they're doing this wrong or this one looks good. And she's like, I do not care. Please leave me alone. So this is a perfect way to talk about something that I'm passionate about. So.
Oh, too funny. And that would be interesting because we spend so much time online and you would see so many different websites. So you'd be able to get a good gauge as to what people are doing well and what they could improve on as well.
Yeah. And I've worked on a lot of websites. I think my first website that I made was probably when I was 17 or 18, but I've just had a lot of opportunities to mess up myself, so to speak, and just kind of see what didn't work, see what works. And it's not as hard. I feel like when you think of the concept of making a website, it can be pretty daunting, but I think it really has way more to do with kind of the EQ side of things, like just understanding. If you can understand why people are buying your product and you can basically spend time learning one specific tool that you get moderately good at, then you'll be just fine.
I think that's so important. We can't be experts at everything, but if we can zoom in on what we're good at and make money from that, then I think that's the success of any business.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But I'd love to know, tell us about how you got involved with e-commerce and how it all came about. You said that you're passionate, that you nerd out over it, but has it always been something that it's been of interest to you?
It was a long time ago that I got into e-commerce specifically. I think I was working on various t-shirt e-commerce stores that I was building for myself. And the reason that they were t-shirt and hoodies was because I was using print on demand, where basically when a customer orders, a different warehouse ships it off. So I didn't have to worry about all the fulfillment. So when you're an 18-year-old kid in a dorm room, that's pretty much the best option for starting up what you think is going to be a business, even though I didn't know anything back then. So all of those basically flopped, it's good. Whenever you meet a successful entrepreneur, typically there's like a graveyard of 5 businesses behind them. And their successful one is front and center. And it's like, oh, they became an overnight success. But yeah, so I eventually my first really successful venture was North Dakota Hoodie. That was the state I was living in at the time with my wife and my kids. And I started a hoodie brand that was it's kind of funny because it's the least populated state in America. So I guess my target audience wasn't as big as I thought it was going to be. But at the time, I just thought it was a good idea. And so I had a lot of things right with that business. Namely, the website was good, the email marketing was good, but I think the like getting the word out, so to speak, it was just I wasn't there yet, didn't understand that aspect of it. But it taught me a lot of valuable skills. And so from there I was like, I want to be an e-commerce email marketer. I specifically was just like, yeah, I think like I was talking about with the IQ and EQ thing, it's just there's something about e-commerce and selling online where you can have the analytical side of your brain working and firing on all cylinders, and then you can have also the emotional side where it's you relate with people, you understand their problems, you you can be friendly with customers, like just that aspect of it. I don't know, it just kind of blended into the perfect mix of the nerd inside of me and the person who likes to hang out with people inside of me. But yeah, so from there, I started to freelance doing e-commerce email marketing. And while I'm not kidding, I think it was like the same week that I decided to start that, some family friends reached out, the Sperrys, and they were honey producers that sell their honey wholesale, and they were wanting to sell their beeswax online. For honey producers, beeswax is just a natural byproduct of the honey production. So they were just, I think Rebecca Sperry had just seen some beeswax in Hobby Lobby, I think it was, and she was just like, "Wow, they're selling this for a lot. So we should try to see if we can turn this into a small side income." So I was like, yeah, I'd love to help. So I set up sperrybeeswax.com for them, kind of got their email marketing set up, their website, their marketing, all that. The beeswax was good and it was selling pretty well. So I was like, I really tried to convince them, like, hey, we should focus on honey too, though, and have it be honey first with the beeswax being a secondary product. So they did that. We made the brand switch and now it's Sperry Honey. So it's kind of the perfect relationship because they're just good old farm folk and don't want to mess with websites or email marketing or anything like that. And I'm like, I like to just nerd out on my computer, and they basically handle the fulfillment of all the products. But I feel like it's my baby. Like I feel like Sperry Honey is kind of my business, and I just have hired somebody to fulfill all the honey and beeswax. So it's a great thing.
Oh, that's so good. And I love how you're so passionate about not only building the website, but actually helping other people grow their business as well. And you get to be a part of that and see the direct result of your efforts. But it's something that you both enjoy, even though they're different things.
Yeah, and it's been a lot of patience, I guess, because it's especially when it's friends, you feel like this extra sense of pressure, even if they're not putting it on you directly, you just kind of feel this pressure like, hey, they're coming to me with this advice. It's an area I'm good at, but I just it's like you don't want to let them down. You want them to have success, and so it kind of adds just this extra level of drive to the project. And I think our sales recently, because we've been at it for probably a year and a half, and I think it takes most businesses, I would, from what I've heard, is it might take 2 to 3 years to be profitable. And we basically had our first profitable week like last week, and it was just like and that was sooner than expected. But it's just like, man, these things, they take time, and you just have to consistently just push at doing the things that you know are the right thing to do. You just have to, it's way more about grit than it is about knowing the right little hack or the right little trick. It's about doing the things that are proven to, and in this case, sell your candles, like just being consistent with the things that you know are right, that you know are just going to take time to flourish. And the good thing is, other people and a lot of your competitors are not as patient as you. So they will give up and move on to different things. So it just kind of, patience is something that I've learned over this time. And it's a really valuable lesson that I've taken to heart.
I love that so much. And it's so important to, as you say, be consistent, have the faith, have the grit, and just keep going, keep showing up, because that's the difference between successful businesses and those that give up or that fail. It's not being able to pivot, it's not being able to learn, it's not having that growth mindset. And when we have that determination that we're doing the right things, we know that it will work out. We just have to, we just have to be patient. It sort of takes some of the pressure off because we know that we're doing the right things. We've just got to keep showing up.
Exactly. That's such a good point.
All right, so let's start talking about websites because I know we're both keen to get into it. Firstly, before we even design a website, we need to know who our target market is or who our target audience is. So how important is it to understand our audience when we're actually designing the website?
I would say it's everything. And I would say it's more important than a lot of people who are designing websites think. Because I think a lot of times what happens is when you're whether you're building a product page around a certain product that you've used before, or you're just building the website in whole, there can be a lot of reasons that you think your customers want to buy from you that actually end up just being the reason that you bought the product. So it's so important to like get the actual feedback. So an example would be going on Etsy and looking up if let's say you sell soy candles and that's just your specialty. Going on Etsy, typing in soy candles and looking at the popular stores and then reading the reviews. That actually shows you why people are buying soy candles specifically. And it's all those different factors of burn length, scent, like all those things. And I'm not claiming to be a candle expert, but it's just there's so many. I just think that there's a huge discrepancy where people oftentimes like, oh, this is why people are buying my product. These are why people are buying my candles. And then they're wondering why just the conversion rates are down, which is just the percentage of people who buy versus your how many people are on the site. It's just the more that you can, no one is stopping you. Also, if you have an existing customer base, you can call your customers. You can say, hey, I'll offer you a $25 Amazon gift card or whatever you want to do. If you just hop on the phone with me for 30 minutes, 45 minutes, just call them, email them. That might be a little bit less intrusive, but just get actual feedback from real people. Say, hey, why did you buy my product? And when you get the real answers, you'll be able to use that to redesign or build your website. Because you'll just know exactly what the copy, like, oh, this is why people buy this product.
Yeah, absolutely. When you can put yourself inside your customer's mind and actually find out the answers to those questions, you can then duplicate it and create more success and bring in and attract other people that want those same things.
Yeah, exactly. And granted, there's not just going to be one size fits all in terms of a buyer persona. Like different people are going to buy your product for different reasons. So you can't just have one website that's just specific to one type of person that buys your candles for one specific reason. But it's just you'll understand how to combine all of those elements into a website where the customer is reading it and they're like, wow, this is speaking to me. This is exactly why I want to buy. They know exactly why I want to buy this product.
Absolutely. That's such a good point. When it comes to designing the website, so actually thinking about, the look, the feel, the font, the colors, all that sort of stuff, what are some key elements of a user-friendly website? So making it easy for the person that's actually going to purchase from us.
I would say the number one thing that I see website designers get wrong is getting in the customer's way. Like you wouldn't think this would be as big of a problem it is, but I think that I've seen like, it's so nerdy that there's even an award show for websites. Like there's actually, you can go on and see websites that win like website of the year and stuff like that. I just think that's kind of hilarious. A little sub niche award ceremony. But the websites that when you click on the websites that win those awards, it's like, you just don't even know how to move around them. Like it's clear that it's just the focus is entirely on this breathtaking, crazy design with these visuals, but it's like it's borderline confusing and you don't really know what to do with it, but it's like for them it works, I guess. But for you and your purposes as a candle website, it's like before, like you don't have to have the best looking website. You don't have to have just the prettiest. You do want good images. I'm not going to downplay the importance of images, but you should focus way more on making it as easy as possible for a customer to actually make the purchase. So I think you don't have to go complete minimalist design, but I'm always a fan of not being super distracting, not adding elements that are confusing or getting in the way. Even an example of this could be like if you're, I was going to say Instagram product feed, but that actually might be a good thing to include in there. But you could just be like on the product page, for example, where if people are on your product page, they're very close to buying a candle, buying a set of candles, and they're very interested. Well, you don't want to like link to your blog if you have one, or say, hey, here's my Instagram, or here's my Pinterest, or whatever, because that's like people are just trying to purchase. You can get out of their way and let them make a purchase and not take them to the apps that are literally designed to addict you and keep you there as long as possible. I think that's just the biggest element is just don't try to not be distracting. Don't get in the customer's way. Like make it a super simple process. And the easiest way to do this is to just once you have your website up, or you're just like looking over a mock-up kind of, just run it through yourself. Like put yourself in the shoes of somebody who's looking to buy candles and try to flip off your own business owner mindset for a second and just be like, hey, is this website easy to find? Like, is it easy to navigate? Do I feel like they're answering my questions? What should be added? What should be taken away? You want to only add things that are going to contribute to somebody buying. And other than that, leave everything out. Like if there's something that you think could be a waste of space, then it's probably a good idea to get rid of it.
That's a really good point. Sometimes we feel like the more information we put in, the more detail, the more that it's going to help, I guess, convince our customer that our product is the best one to purchase because of all these details that we're putting in. And really, like you say, it can be just overwhelming, or it can be confusing, or it can get in the customer's way. And if they're confused or overwhelmed, or if they don't know how to navigate your site, then they'll click off and they'll look somewhere else.
Exactly. And it's like, it really just comes down to like, you do want really quality photos. If you know somebody who's a photographer and can take really good photos of your candles, that's very important. I mean, it would make sense if you had bad photos on the website and then you were going on as a customer, like you're going to be like, ooh, that's not a, I don't know if I want to buy candles from them. Or maybe it's the opposite. Maybe in this case, if you're really talking about your own, you're just really talking about your story, which you should do, talking about your background, making them feel connected to you as a person, then maybe a little bit grainy of photos, like as long as they highlight the actual product and show what's behind it, that wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. Like it's not ideal, but it's not like they'll understand like, hey, this is Caleb's candles. He clearly took these photos with his iPhone. It's a real person. And there's some trust. There's a trust element there. But all that to say, besides images, you can just focus on having simple, clean copy that explains everything that it needs to and nothing that it doesn't.
Yes, exactly. Keep it simple and keep it concise.
Exactly.
So for those of us that are wanting to create our own website, are there any e-commerce platforms that you would necessarily recommend for a candle business owner?
Yeah, I would recommend Shopify. That's what I use for Sperry Honey. And I just think and I use specifically the Dawn theme because you can have like themes that you plug in with Shopify. I think Shopify overall is the best combination of letting you have control over how your site looks and also making it easy for you where you don't have to mess with things that you shouldn't have to. Like, I think that there's like kind of a spectrum where you're going to have your Squarespaces, your Wixes, probably your website's using Square, the the payment processor. I think those are going to be on the end of they're very easy to use, but they're hard to control your website. And so that might be a great starting point, especially if you haven't sold any candles yet and you're just trying to get something up and kind of get your marketing going. I wouldn't be opposed to you using one of those tools just to kind of have a little bit of proof of concept, just trying to build some momentum so that you're also going to have more energy to learn Shopify or a more advanced tool once you are actually getting sales and you kind of have that like, okay, this is like what this knowledge that I'm investing in is because it's going to make me more money down the road. But I would say if you're starting out, those are good. If you want to just invest in the longest term platform that I'd recommend, it's definitely Shopify. The only exception to that would be if you already know WordPress really well, then I've never used it. I've used WordPress before in Divi, but I've never used WooCommerce. But if you know WordPress really well, then I would probably just stick with WooCommerce. But yeah, like I said, if you're starting out, I highly recommend keep it simple and then just apply the basic elements. You're not going to have complete creative control with those tools, but it should be enough to get your initial sales because I think, and this is something I've done so much of in the past that I think is a mistake, is just like before you even launch, just like worrying so much, overthinking about so many different aspects. It's like you just need to kind of get like you're not going to learn as much in your own head like before anything's actually happened as much as you will if you're out there selling candles, like learning from customers, all of that. You're going to learn so much more when you're actually out there doing. So I think it might be in your best interest to just kind of, especially if you're like, for example, already selling your beeswax through Square when people pick it up and they pay you that way. And I don't know what the standard is, but then it would just make sense to use their website builder, kind of get something simple up that you don't have to really worry about it. You can worry about other aspects of the business. And then once your business is at a point where it's like, okay, we've clearly outgrown Square, you'll have plenty of time to move on to Shopify or WooCommerce. But I would say Shopify or WooCommerce are definitely would probably be the only two options for people who are growing sizable businesses where you're making a living income off of it.
Yes, exactly. And as I said at the top of the episode, it's not about receiving orders through DMs and thinking that that's the way that you will grow your business to a level that will replace a part-time job or a full-time job or bring in a sizable income. You need to make that investment into your business to grow your business, and to do that via Shopify or via another tool that can actually help you develop your business and develop your website. It's one of those important steps in growing a business. And rather than looking at it like, this is a huge investment, will I make my money back? It's about you're going to be educating yourself on the process of designing your website as well. So you're bringing in more skills, more tools for your own personal growth that will benefit your business in the long term. So I think it's about having those mindset shifts and knowing that if this is your dream to have a business and to grow your business, you need to take it seriously. And that means you have to have a website. There's just no way around it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So when it comes to, say, the actual homepage or product page, so what the customers are actually looking at, what recommendations would you have on what they should see on those pages?
Yeah, I would say for the homepage, I think people land on your site. Maybe they know about you, but it's just a good way to kind of it's just a good way to get people to know you better. So I would say your homepage, you don't have to be super aggressive with selling the product, just highlighting. I like to call them value props, which is short for value propositions, but just like various value props. An example would just be, I don't know, you could talk about how cozy these candles are, you could talk about how they smell, how long they burn as opposed to Yankee Candle, like just kind of differentiators, or just fast shipping, like you'll ship it out in 4 days or something, or pickup. Those basic value propositions are good to include, but you don't need to pepper them on the homepage as much as you will on the product page. I would say the homepage and the about page, I think that it's so, and I did this, like I think when I was first starting my e-commerce stores, you just kind of have this sense of, oh no, if people realize that I'm just and I'll put myself in maybe somebody else's shoes. Like if people realize that I'm just like a mom with two kids and this is just a part-time income, it's not even like they'll know that it's not even a legitimate business, yada yada, and you get kind of scared. And so you kind of want to talk in like we as a company formed in 2022 or 2021 or something, and we take the most pride in delivering the best experience to our customers. Like just I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but talking in a way that just kind of hides behind the brand. Like if people wanted to buy from that brand, they would shop from Yankee Candle in Walmart. Like it's just the main differentiator, the reason, especially for people who don't understand yet why your candles are different from just the random candles they can find at the store. The reason why you're different is you and your story. People, to quote, I think it's Kurt Elster from the unofficial Shopify podcast, but he always talks about people buy from people. Your main differentiator from just, and I feel this with honey, where people could just buy the honey that's filled with corn syrup and additives anyway, but that's a whole separate podcast. But they could buy that at Walmart if they wanted to. It's much cheaper than Sperry Honey. So what makes it different? And so I have to focus on the Sperry's story, how it's a small farm, how they handle all the honey production themselves. Like there's just people connect with that small business story. And so you talking about all the different things that will make people relate to you, that's what builds trust. And that's just the best introduction you could have. So if you're like you should tell your story about, hey, I work a job, my husband works a job, but I'm building up this business. I'd really like to just grow it into my full-time income one day. We're on the path, and just saying like your about page could literally be, and included on your homepage could be a letter from the founder, like from you. That's, you could even upload an image of your signature on there so that so that it shows, oh, this really is a letter from Kirsty or Caleb or whoever. But the homepage is all about just getting to know you, build that personal connection. And I think another factor with that is a lot of times, especially nowadays, with just sellers, like e-commerce sellers can be kind of ambiguous. Like you land on a store that you clicked on from an Instagram ad and you're like, if I order this, are they really going to send me this product? Like, is this really a trustworthy brand? And so when people find out about you, you just introducing yourself as a person are like, oh, nobody would introduce themselves as a person if this was just one big scam and it wasn't a legitimate business. But people just connect with you. And so just to, with the homepage, with people just landing there from the jump, just start that off with a nice warm introduction and just talk about your product a little bit. Explain who you are, explain what this is. People just want to know. And then the product page, if people are clicking, then they for your product page, if people are clicking, if they're landing on there, then they're much more likely to buy. So this is where you can be a little bit more aggressive, and not super aggressive, but just talking about the different, like I said, value propositions. You can talk about what I call transition or transactional value props, which is not necessarily talking about the candles and why they're better, but more about like sometimes people will hear all about your candles, they see why those candles are great, but then they're like, it's like a buyer's dilemma. Like they're like, I'm still not sure if I want to do this. So you have to kind of work them over the edge with the actual transaction. Like talk about how you have fast shipping, and I would recommend this. I don't know what your opinion is on this, Kirsty, but I think that especially when you're starting out, you should have a refund policy. I would literally, and we've done this before, I would literally have a 100% guaranteed, no questions asked, whenever you want. Like I wouldn't even limit it with a time. Like I would say like whenever, because from my experience, when I've done that, people, you get way less returns than you think you did. And I had apparel companies, like apparel is going to have way more refunds just because like, oh, it didn't fit right. Like the t-shirt was just too big or whatever. So like if anybody was going to get refunds, it was going to be me, like having to process that. But I would put free refunds, no questions asked. For the amount of refunds that you will eventually get, where people just send the product back, you're going to get way more orders from people who, seeing that, it actually pushed them over the edge to make that purchase because they trust it. Like there's so much like, oh, I have to like look on this website, look at their like go find their terms and conditions, like when can I refund this? And you just kind of get that fear when you're shopping, unless it's like Amazon or something. If I order this, it's like it's the last chance. Like if I won't be able to refund it, I better be confident. And they're like sweating, like I better be confident that I want to make this purchase. When in reality, if you just offer you brand it as no risk purchase. Like you could, I literally have put like no risk orders, like be so upfront with that. Another transactional value prop I like to use is limited supply. That's probably the easiest one. It's people kind of have this mentality that, oh, I see this product, it's here and it's going to be here forever. And you don't want to lie about it. Obviously, there's plenty of people in e-commerce I've seen that will lie about this, where they say like limited stock, and it's like they're always in stock. It's not really an issue. But as long as you're intentional with like, okay, I could run out of this product, so I'm okay to put this up here, and you're being transparent. Talk about how it's limited supply. People just have this mindset where they can purchase it whenever, and in reality, you can help them you can guide them of like, oh, this product won't be around forever, and that adds scarcity and can be a key driver to push them over the edge to make that purchase. But yeah, so I would just say homepage to summarize. I know I kind of went on for a long time there, but homepage about introducing yourself, kind of your product, maybe mentioning some value props, and then product page, you just kind of want to be a little bit more aggressive with just value props. This is why this set of candles will be a great product. This is why there's no little to no risk with ordering, and we're not going to have these forever. So you might want to order soon.
It's about having integrity in your business, but also being upfront and honest with your customers and say, look, this is the reality. This is a small business. There isn't stock that's unlimited. And being truthful about that and being honest. And I think that's really important, because the more you can show of who you are as a person inside your business, the more connection and more trust, and the more likely a person will convert or purchase from you, because they know that you're a person, not just a big business trying to make money.
And that trust goes past the first purchase and into repeat purchases. I mean, when people build that connection, like if people were like, people don't have a person. I know I'm using Yankee Candle as an example, but people don't have a personal connection with Yankee Candle. It's just the option that they see on the shelf. They smell it. They're like, "Ooh, this smells good," so they buy it. With you, people can build that personal connection, and that's your advantage to building that lifelong customer relationship, where people are like, "Oh, I'm out of candles. I'm going to buy more from this person that I like. This product was great. I know this person. I know their story. And so I'm going to buy from them again." It just goes a long way to what's called your customer lifetime value. And I think when you can really build that trust, you're just going to get more sales in the long run.
Yes, absolutely. I think that's such a good point. It's so important to have that trust, because trust can take a while to earn, and you definitely don't want to break it once you've got that trust with your customers. This episode is brought to you by the membership for candle makers, the Candle Makers Collective. Becoming a member gives you access to fortnightly online group Q&A coaching sessions to support you, monthly online workshops and trainings to help you grow your business, plus frequent expert guest speakers to inspire and teach you. You'll also have access to an ever-growing resource library with templates, guides, planners, and ebooks. But my favorite aspect of the membership is our exclusive Facebook group for accountability, connection, and support. So if you're looking to take your candle business to the next level and learn more about the membership for candle makers, click the link in the show notes for the Candle Makers Collective. So tell me, with website copy, so the actual words that we're using, how do we build that trust with our potential customers?
Yeah, I would say it just goes back to talking about your story. I would say copy kind of like people like I was mentioning before, people like to just focus on the design, like to focus on a lot of other aspects. But I think like people do still read in 2023. I know that might be a shocker, but people still read, especially when they're trying to make an informed decision. So I would say you're going to want to, like, pictures will do the job of showing visually your candles and showing your product, but the copy is what's going to kind of answer the customer's questions. They're going to kind of just actually help the customer process, like, okay, this is why I should buy candles from this site. Super important.
Yes, definitely. So how do we balance, say, being creative, but also being informative with our customers? Like, we want to show a bit of our personality. We want to inform them about the actual descriptions, but not bore them with all of the facts. How do we find that balance?
So I would say write like you talk. Like, it's just, you
Mm,
can keep it really conversational. And it's always, like I said, you can always just run your website through the test of, you put on the candle buyer lens and just like, okay, is this like too professional? Is this somebody that if they were talking to me, like, would I want to buy from them? I think kind of back to that point of just the too much business like lingo, I think you can avoid that. And it's just kind of like, I'm not saying you can't have it at all, but it just kind of rubs people the wrong way. I think that you
mm,
really just need to lean into being conversational with how you describe things. And I think that, like, that's the whole part of your shtick of being, of what separates you from the big candle brands, is
mm,
your personal touch, like we've said. So just try to make it feel like you're explaining your product to somebody, but you're just having a conversation. Like, maybe pretend like you're writing to a friend when you're
mm,
talking about different aspects of your candles. Like, what would, if I was explaining this aspect, and you can explain what it is and why it is, like why certain product highlights are important, because a lot of people just buy because of, like I said, like what they smell on the shelf. And so I think just focusing on keeping it conversational, pretending like you're talking to somebody, like you're talking to a friend. Hey, what would it take to convince them that your candles are as good as you say they are? And the thing is, you believe in your product, and you know that your product is so good. So kind of like, you don't have you don't have to be like running on adrenaline, but kind of hype yourself up about your product. Like, I think there's a lot of imposter syndrome with just small business in general, where it just feels like, like, if they actually knew like what my product was, yada yada, like, or once they get the candles, they won't like it, whatever. First off, you can settle that by, with the 100% guaranteed like refunds whenever. If people think, like, if you have that imposter syndrome and you're scared about like, oh, maybe my candles aren't that good, then people will send them back, no problem. But if you're consistently getting repeat orders and a lot of orders, then that's proof to you that your candles are that good and worthy of everything that you've written on the website. So when you're writing the website, I would say highlight them as much as you can, make them sound as good as you believe they are. And then if there's an aspect, if, which I don't think this will happen, but if somebody happens to, like, you start to get a lot of refunds and it's for a particular reason, then you can always be like, okay, my imposter syndrome was right in that circumstance, which that won't happen. People are
mm.
going to buy your product, they're going to love it, and so you need to believe in your product. And like I said, go through reviews of popular Amazon and Etsy sellers, and especially if you have an established business right now, reach out to your customers. And you can still go on Amazon and Etsy for like soy candles, beeswax candles, whatever, and just focus, like literally take wide, like try to look for consistent themes. Try to look for things that you see over and over again. And you'll customers, right, how they conversate, like they're not gonna like talk in super business tone. So you'll be pretty close with how they're communicating how they feel about the product if you just kind of communicate that on your website, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it does. And I think that's so important, just to go back to your previous point, where we don't want to talk in business lingo. We don't want to be too formal, particularly when it comes to candles. You think about the actual product. We're not selling, legal services. We're not an accountant. We're wanting to connect in with the emotions of the customer, and we wanting to connect them to memories with the scent of the different fragrances that we offer. And so having that conversational tone and being able to pretend like we are talking to a friend through our copy, whether that's through the website, through social media, through email marketing, or if we're at a market and we're actually speaking to customers in person. That again builds that trusting connection and again sets you apart from the big stores where it is just a product that's made by a machine.
So true. So true. Yeah.
So let's nerd out a little bit more on something that some of the listeners may not have heard before, and that's called A/B testing. Can you explain for those that don't know what that is and how we can use it to improve our website?
Yeah. So A/B testing is a really good idea. I'll say that first and foremost. It's basically like you just kind of, let's say you want to see which header text for your homepage leads to more, I guess that would be kind of hard to track clicks, but let's say that you want to test your product title for your candles on your product page and you want to see which leads to more purchases. Or maybe you would want to test a button if you want to say like shop now or buy candles and you want to see which works better. A/B testing is basically as simple as it sounds. You have A and you have B. So over a set period of time, you will change the header to, you'll call it header A and you'll put the first thing that you're testing. And then you'll have, after that period is done, you'll test header B. And after both of those tests are done, you'll just basically compare the numbers. So yeah, so A/B testing it's just a great way to see, like you can guess at what header is the best, or you can guess at what button text is the best, but your customers will tell you based on that data. I will say when you're starting out, it can be really hard if you don't have a lot of site traffic to A/B test. Like a lot of times you don't have enough visitors to actually get accurate numbers. So I would just kind of use your best judgment until you're at a point where you might have like, I don't know, maybe, I mean, even a few hundred visitors a month would probably be enough to kind of get a general sense. Like if you have 100 visitors a month and test A leads to 8 purchases and test B leads to 7 purchases, which that conversion rate would be incredible. It's
It would.
typically not that high, but if it's like that, like close, I would say those aren't necessarily. I wouldn't say that that's like a winning test. I would say you would need more data where you can see a clear winner. But if you have enough data, the key to a successful A/B test is you need to eliminate outside variables. And I feel like I'm going back to my high school chemistry class where we're like running tests in the lab. But if there's other things that are going to get in the way of the test, you're not going to get accurate results. So like, let's say, at least for when we sell beeswax, I'm assuming it coincides with the candle hype, but typically the fall months and the winter months, specifically the fall though, are when people are buying a lot of our beeswax. So if I'm testing, let's say I want to test the buy now button for beeswax. Let's say I do shop beeswax as the call to action for the month of August. And so I run that for a month. It's all good. I get a lot of data. And then for the month of September, I try the second test just to compare it. Well, September is going to have a lot more purchases than August anyway. So I'm not going to really have an accurate comparison. If I were to look at those two, I'd be like, wow, test B is way better. I should definitely stick with this. When in reality, it's just because I'm getting a lot more site traffic than I normally would in the month of August. Or for example, like in staying consistent with the sense of wanting to eliminate variables, let's say I change the 2 buy buttons, but then I also change the body text, and then I also change the header text during those 2 tests in August and September. That's going to mess up the results because I don't know if I can really credit the increase in purchases with the actual buy button. Maybe it was actually the product description that changed everything. Maybe it was the header. So the key is I would find months that you expect to be consistent and make sure that you're not changing anything else on the website or just the product page in general when you're placing an A/B test. So when you're doing an A/B test, make sure you're eliminating variables and make sure you're getting enough data so that you can conclude, okay, this was an accurate test and we'll go with this.
So interesting. I think it's fascinating to think that the whole experience of running a business is a journey of exploration. And when we go into such depth with the data and we can play around with how things look to test to see if that will bring in more website traffic, if they will become more, if we will get more conversions, so more customers, and whether they become repeat customers. It should be fun, even though it can be a lot of learning and a lot of discovery on our part. But this is how big businesses work. We need to think, even though we are small businesses, we need to think strategically and intentionally about how to grow a business, and using something like A/B testing, although it's a little bit more down the track for perhaps where you are on your candle journey now. I think it's important to know that there are these different ways of creating knowledge in your business to generate more sales in the long term.
Yeah, that's a great point. I love how you're just emphasizing changing your mindset to keep these different things in focus. Like, if you are wanting to have a legitimate business, like you said, you have to keep these things in mind. Totally.
It's not just, unfortunately, not just make a pretty candle and put it on a website or social media and say buy now, and people will flock to your product page and you'll sell out in 12 hours or a day. It's a lot more involved in that, particularly because the candle industry is saturated. There are a lot of competitors, which, as I've said before in this podcast, have pros and cons to being in a saturated industry. But I think I saw something on Instagram this morning today, actually, and it said, out of the whole population, I don't know how true this is, 10% of us will create a business, or 10 of us will create a creative business. Of that 10%, there'll only be 10% that have the patience and the determination and the grit. And of that 10%, you'll have the people that will actually be successful because they're willing to adapt and willing to learn. So if you think of it like, yes, it's a saturated industry and a lot of people are coming into it to make candles and learn the craft, not everyone's going to stay for the long term. So if this is something that you want to do for the long term, if this is something that you want to create for your life, the number of competitors, although will fluctuate in terms of who the people are, it's not going to be as big a pool of people as you might think.
Yeah, exactly.
So tell me, Caleb, about SEO. How important is that for an e-commerce website?
Yeah, I think that's a perfect segue. SEO, for those who don't know, is search engine optimization, just kind of basically just getting your website and your pages up in Google so that someone's searching soy candles in, I don't know, Fargo, where I used to live, then you're going to want to be first for that result. I think SEO at its core is, in 2023, still probably the most important marketing just thing. It's not the only marketing that you should focus on. I think it's probably tied with just creating content and kind of building your relationship there with social media. They're both super important. But I think what's really unique about SEO is the buyer intent with the traffic. Like, when somebody stumbles upon your Instagram and they see your content, they see you making candles, they're not necessarily in the mode right now to buy candles. They might not even like candles yet. So it's still valuable for you to be there and to be kind of front and center, maybe somebody's introduction to just kind of diving deeper into candles, about why they should buy it, all that. But SEO is like, you don't have to convince anybody. Like, if somebody's searching soy candles in Fargo and I sell soy candles, it's like, I don't have to do any convincing. It's like they're coming to me. They have the buyer intent. They're ready to purchase. The goal of their Google search is to find soy candles that they can buy. So it's obviously super valuable, but it's also pretty competitive, and it's been around longer than social media. So I think SEO, I mean, Google came out in 1998 or 97, and SEO is like a practice, has kind of been around since the early 2000s. So unlike a lot of like social media tactics, SEO, there's a lot of big brands where it's kind of the core of their organic marketing. And so it is going to be a little bit competitive. And that's why I keep saying your differentiator is that you're local. So I would say if you're trying to frame an SEO strategy, you should really, especially if you offer like local pickup, you should really be focused in the beginning on ranking high for your area, ranking for when people search soy candles and whatever. So that means you should be on your website. And it's not like, none of this should be in an unnatural way. You shouldn't try to like force like your hometown or your city in where it doesn't fit, but you should definitely be mentioning your home city, any neighborhoods that you're like nearby. Like I would want to say on my website, like, I make candles at my home in Fargo or whatever, or I we're some of the best candles in North Dakota or something. Basically, those keywords, it's not the biggest factor, but it is still a factor that lets Google know, okay, this website is based in Fargo. So when people are searching for candles, the term candles in Fargo, I should like when people are searching for the term candles in Fargo, Google's like, I should put this results up first. So it's very important. It's difficult and it takes time. I'm actually in the middle of that with Sperry Honey right now, where I'm trying to create honey based recipes because I feel like that's the good SEO strategy for us. But it takes time. And it didn't help that we went from sperrybeeswax.com to sperryhoney.com because it's
Mm.
basically like resetting the clock on like telling Google that you're like just building trust in Google's eyes. But it's the longest, probably hardest, one of the hardest marketing channels that you can endeavor down. But once you get there, it's got to be the most, I would say, the most valuable for an e-commerce business. And that goes back to like what we were saying with social media. Like, yes, building like a relationship with people on social media is super important, but also like Instagram was designed. I don't know if you've seen the Netflix documentary Social Dilemma, but it's basically all these people who used to work at these tech companies and kind of built a lot of the infrastructure, like the head of product at Gmail or something, or the person who designed the Instagram homepage. Like there's just a bunch of people talking about the tactics they would use to build those. And they designed those like slot machines where you're scrolling and it's like you're like, what am I gonna get? What am I gonna get? Like the my point is the apps are designed to suck you in. So the traffic, it's like even if somebody clicks your link in bio off of Instagram to go to your homepage or your product page or whatever, the odds of them like, I want to go back to scrolling through Instagram Reels and clicking the X in the corner and then going right back to it are very high and much higher than people who are on their phone on Google or on their desktop on Google who are searching for something with the intent to buy. So it's way harder, but it's really, really, really important.
That's so interesting to hear your perspective on how important SEO is and I guess, the challenges of getting it right, but the benefits of getting it right as well are so important and so incredible.
Yeah, absolutely.
Caleb, we've come to one of my favorite parts of the podcast where I ask all my guests three questions relating to candles. Question number one is, what is your favorite candle fragrance?
Right now is cranberry because that's what we have burning in our living room right now. It's kind of funny because I moved to Florida. Me and my wife and two toddlers moved to Florida. We moved 2 months ago, and it's just like it's been weird going from North Dakota, which is very far north, to Florida, where it's tropical, and we're in the winter months now, or we're getting into the winter months now. The temperature should at least be changing, and all that's really happening in Florida is like that it kind of gets a little cold to us. What's cold to us now, which is 60 degrees, we're like, that's getting kind of chilly. And we kind of miss, I mean, you miss and you don't. Like you kind of
Mm.
romanticize the fall. So it's like we're excited to be in the warmer weather, but it's like we kind of want that ambiance of like the cozy, like while it's cold outside, like at least to pretend like that's still real. So the cranberry candle has actually been really nice lately.
Oh, that's so lovely. Question two, what do you love about candles? I feel like you answered that, but I'll ask it anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, I like the just the calm vibes. I mean,
Mm.
after I put the my toddlers to bed, like me and my wife we try to read as much as we can. I feel like sometimes you just kind of end up scrolling anyway, but
Hmm.
you try to read and kind of create that nice, like relaxing state. And it's just so nice and calm. And a candle just adds to that. Like there's just something about the open flame that's just so natural. It's so, in a sense, like it's the feeling that you get from just kind of a fire or a flame is just, you can't really create it. Like humans can't replicate that. So I just think there's something that for being inside and indoors, just to kind of be so close to something that's just so, I don't know, natural and earthy. I don't know how else to
Mm.
describe it. Like just it's just a really nice feeling.
Yeah, no, I love that. I love how it's so, yeah, it's very calming and it sets the ambiance for your home and it helps you feel connected to, I don't know, it's just a little flame, but it helps you feel connected to nature and being in the outdoors, which is beautiful.
Yeah, because we're so busy too, and we're so
Mm,
like we're just looking at computers all day, we're looking at our phones all day. Like to just, I think one thing recently I've just really been trying to focus is just kind of being more bored, I guess. Like I feel like that's kind of
hmm
a in the world of social media and just the world of just go go go. I feel like I want to practice just not getting a dopamine hit right now, like not just like checking my phone the second I like need to take a break or something like that. Like just trying to
hmm
relax. There's just something about a candle that just really adds to that. That just that peaceful,
hmm
just calm state.
Absolutely. And the last question is, what is one piece of advice you'd like to give to candle makers during their journey?
Just like we talked about, be patient, put in the work. It's not like you're working on a product that you're not sure if it'll sell. Like candles have been around for so long, and there's no question on whether or not people will continue to buy them in the future. So that can be really encouraging to you of just like be patient. You know you have a good product. Just do the things that you know you're supposed to be doing. Just try to be kind of efficient with your time in that sense, but also like you were mentioning, evolve. Like you should. It's funny because I've heard it said like if you're not looking back on what you were doing in business 5 years ago and kind of cringing, like, why was I doing that? Then that just means you haven't shown personal growth. Like you want to like be honest and transparent with yourself of okay, I this thing that I've been doing for 6 months, like maybe it's a marketing tactic or like a certain thing with your business, how you, I don't know, how you're fulfilling or whatever. It's like I've been doing it for so long, but I need to be unemotional in the sense that if I know in my gut it's not the right thing to do, then I should stop doing that and transition over to the right thing. Because when you started doing that thing, you didn't know that it was the wrong thing. You were just getting started out.
Mhm.
So you just need to, you want to be patient and put in the work, but you want to evolve.
Caleb, thank you so, so much for being on the podcast today and sharing all of your wisdom and expertise and knowledge when it comes to websites and marketing and just having that patience, grit, and perseverance when it comes to building a business. For the listeners that would love to get in touch with you and learn a little bit more about Sperry Honey, where can we find you online?
So you can, my personal email is caleb@sperryhoney.com. If you have website questions, feel free to email me. I'll answer them as best as I can. And also, you can go to sperryhoney.com and you'll go to the top of the website and you'll see a little beeswax link. If anybody's interested in any beeswax, we have some great options there. We have a lot of different size blocks and Rebecca Sperry, the like I was mentioning, the co-founder with Mark, she pours all the molds herself. She filters it all, cleans all the beeswax blocks. So you're really getting a really really nice product, and the reviews are really good too. So you can instead of listening to me talk about it, you can listen to people who have bought the product talk about it. But if you'd like to get 15% off, you can use the coupon code podcast, and like I mentioned, that'll get you 15% off.
Perfect. Thank you so much for your generosity and for sharing that. I know that we mentioned earlier, or perhaps before we hit record, that I've got listeners, even though I'm based in Australia, got listeners all over the world, including America, which is where you are, Caleb. So it's definitely beneficial if you are an American listener and you're wanting to take advantage of that discount code. Make sure you visit the website, and I will leave all the links in the show notes below. But thank you so, so much, Caleb, for being on the podcast. I really appreciate your time.
Yeah, Kirsty, it was really great to be on here. I really appreciate it. And I always enjoy like having an excuse to kind of talk about websites. So really appreciate that.
Thank you, my friend, for listening to this episode. Check out the show notes for all the links mentioned throughout the conversation, and please subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss any future episodes. And if you're feeling inspired, I would love it if you would write a review for the podcast and give a 5-star rating. Thank you so much and have a beautiful day.